In the late 1960s, a strange phenomenon swept across California grocery stores. It wasn't a robbery, but it was a transfer of wealth so massive and invisible that regulators didn't know how to classify it. It looked like a harmless loyalty program involving small blue stamps. But to a lawyer named Charlie Munger, it was something else entirely. It was a legal money printing machine. You see, the stores paid for the stamps up front. The customers held the stamps for months, sometimes years, before redeeming them. In that gap of time, the stamp company held millions of dollars in cash. It was interest-free, tax-deferred, and completely unrestricted. This is what we call float. Most people looked at the stamp company and saw a retail gimmick. Munger looked at it and saw an insurance company in disguise. He realized that if you could control that pool of money and invest it wisely before the customers came back for their toasters, you could build an empire. And that is exactly what he and Warren Buffett did. They didn't just buy a stamp company, they bought a bank that didn't have to follow banking regulations. This story isn't just about clever finance. It is the perfect introduction to how Charlie Munger viewed the world. While everyone else was fighting for scraps on the surface, he was looking at the plumbing underneath. He didn't try to be smarter than everyone else. He just tried to see reality as it actually was. And as we peel back the layers of his life, you'll see that this ability to see the hidden machinery wasn't a gift. It was a survival mechanism forged in absolute tragedy. To understand the man who engineered one of the greatest fortunes in history, we have to rewind to 1953. This is not a story of a genius investor picking stocks. This is a story of a 29-year-old man walking the streets of Pasadena, crying. Charlie Munger was divorced, which in the 1950s was shameful. He was broke, having lost almost everything in the settlement. And worst of all, his 9-year-old son, Teddy, was dying of leukemia. In an era before modern cancer treatments, there was nothing he could do. Day after day, Munger would go to the hospital, hold his son, and watch him fade. Then he would walk out into the night, weeping before composing himself to go do legal work to pay the medical bills. When Teddy died, Munger was left with a shattered life. Most people would have broken. Some would have turned to alcohol, others would have become bitter. This is where Munger applied what would become his most famous mental model long before he had a name for it. Inversion, instead of asking, "How do I become happy?" which felt impossible, he asked, "What will ensure my absolute misery and destruction?" The answer was clear: envy, self-pity, and resentment. If he indulged in those, he was finished. So he inverted the problem. He decided that no matter how awful the hand he was dealt, he would not allow himself to drift into victimhood. He treated his grief as a problem to be managed with logic. He told himself, envy is a really stupid sin because it is the only one you could never possibly have any fun at. This wasn't coldness. It was a desperate cling to survival. He realized that the world doesn't owe you fairness. It only offers you a choice: accept the blows and keep building, or deny reality and dissolve. After surviving the worst, Munger realized that most people fail, not because they are stupid, but because they are rigid. It wasn't a lack of IQ points, it was a lack of perspective. He noticed a dangerous pattern in the business world called the man with a hammer syndrome. You know the saying, to the man with a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. It sounds like a cliche, but Munger saw it as a cognitive trap. When you only have one tool, you don't just solve problems badly, you define the problem incorrectly, just so you can use your tool. If you are an economist, you try to explain the world only with supply and demand. If you are a biologist, it is all about genetics. Each expert shines a narrow beam of light into a dark room, convinced they are seeing the whole picture when they are only seeing a fraction of it. Munger saw this as a form of insanity. Reality is not divided into academic departments. The universe doesn't care about your degree. The world is a complex, messy soup where biology, psychology, math, and history all interact at once. He argued that to function effectively, you need a latticework of mental models. Note the word latticework, not a heap, not a random list. A structure where ideas hang together and make each other stronger. Imagine your brain is a toolbox. Most people walk around with just a hammer, but life throws plumbing problems and electrical problems at you. You cannot fix a leaky pipe with a hammer without destroying the wall. Munger spent his life collecting tools from every discipline he could find. He took critical mass from physics and applied it to business growth. He took compound interest from math and applied it to knowledge. He took Pavlovian association from psychology and applied it to marketing. He didn't just memorize facts. He looked for the principles that govern how systems work. When he looked at a business like Coca-Cola, he didn't just see a beverage company. A traditional analyst looks at the price of syrup. Munger looked deeper. He saw a biological feedback loop, sugar and caffeine triggering a dopamine response. He saw a machine designed to create habits. He analyzed a soda can like a physicist analyzes an atom. This is why he beat the market. While Wall Street was looking at spreadsheets, Munger was looking at the ecosystem. He knew that if you only have one model, you will torture reality until it fits your model. And that is a guaranteed way to make a catastrophic mistake. Let's go deeper into his favorite tool, inversion. This concept defines Munger's philosophy more than any other. It fights against our biological programming. Our brains are wired to look forward to seek the prize. We are naturally optimistic hunters. Munger says, stop. Turn around. Look at the cliff you are trying to avoid. He famously said, all I want to know is where I am going to die. So I'll never go there. It sounds like a joke. But it is a profound strategy. It shifts your focus from a complex variable you can't control to a binary risk you can. If you want to be a successful investor, everyone asks, what stock will go up 1,000%? That involves luck. Instead, inversion asks, what would bankrupt me? It is much easier to spot a fraud or a dying industry than it is to predict the future. The logic is ruthless. If you multiply any number by zero, you get zero. Therefore, your primary job is to prevent the zero. If you avoid the things that kill you, you survive. And in the world of money, survival is the prerequisite for wealth. If you survive long enough, the math of compounding takes care of the rest. This applies to everything. Want a happy marriage? Don't try to be the perfect spouse. Just identify the things that destroy marriage's infidelity, dishonesty, unreliability, and ruthlessly eliminate them. It is far easier to avoid being a source of misery than it is to be a constant source of delight. Want to be smart? Don't try to be a genius. Trying to be brilliant is a trap. Just identify the standard stupidities, impulsiveness, unchecked ego, following the herd, and avoid them. Munger's life proved that you don't need to be brilliant to be rich. You just need to be consistently not stupid over a very long period of time. It is the anti-success strategy. It's boring. It's unsexy, but it works with the reliability of gravity. If inversion is the shield, then incentive analysis is the sword. Charlie Munger believed that human behavior is almost entirely driven by incentives. He operated by a rigid rule. Show me the incentive, and I will show you the outcome. If the incentives are wrong, the behavior will be wrong. It does not matter how good-hearted the people are. Consider the famous case of Federal Express in its early days. They faced a survival problem. Their central hub was clogging up every night. Packages weren't getting sorted fast enough to make the planes. Management tried everything, speeches, threats, begging. Nothing worked. Were these workers lazy? But the system was failing. Munger would ask just one question: what is the incentive? The workers were paid by the hour. Therefore, their rational reason to make money was to sell as many hours as possible. Working faster literally cost them money. They were being rewarded for slowness. Once FedEx realized this, they changed the system. They started paying the workers by the shift, not the hour. The deal changed. Once the packages were sorted, they could go home and still get paid for the full shift. Suddenly, the incentive aligned with the goal. The hub emptied out in record time. The problem vanished overnight. The lesson is simple. If you are struggling with a person or a business, stop analyzing their character. Look at their paycheck. If a financial advisor gets paid a fat commission to sell you a mediocre product, he will sell you that product. He won't feel like a crook. His brain will convince him it is actually good for you, simply because it is good for him. If you don't understand the incentives in the room, you are the victim. Now, what happens when you combine all of this? You get what Munger called the Lollapalooza effect. This occurs when 3 or 4 distinct forces all push in the same direction at the same time. The result isn't just additive, it explodes. Think about an auction. You have social proof, everyone else is bidding. You have scarcity, only one item. You have commitment, you already bid once, and you have the fear of losing. Together, these forces turn rational people into maniacs. Munger applied this to find value. He looked for businesses that possessed a Lollapalooza of advantages. A company like C's Candies didn't just sell chocolate. It had a local monopoly and deep brand love. People bought it for love, not logic. It was a perfect storm of profit. This explains why Munger and Buffett often sat on billions of dollars for years, doing absolutely nothing. They were waiting for a Lollapalooza. They weren't day traders. They were ambush predators. They waited for the odds to be so overwhelmingly in their favor that they practically couldn't lose. Most investors feel the itch to constantly act. Munger had the discipline to do nothing until the math was undeniable. And when that moment came, they bet heavily. Charlie Munger passed away at 99 years old. He left behind billions, but his real legacy is the mental operating system he gave us. If we boil his 99 years down to a single checklist, it looks like this. First, invert. Don't try to be brilliant. Just avoid being consistently stupid. It is far easier to avoid debt and toxic people than it is to be a genius. Second, learn. Build a toolbox. Reality is complex, so don't try to solve every problem with a hammer. Third, incentives always know who is paying whom. Never trust a recommendation from someone who profits from your decision. And finally, patience. Understand that the massive returns come at the very end. You must survive the wait to get the prize. Munger didn't chase wealth, he chased rationality. The money was just a side effect of making fewer errors than everyone else. So, the next time you face a difficult decision, don't ask, what would a genius do? Ask, what would a fool do? And then walk in the opposite direction. If you want to build your own latticework of mental models, I've compiled a list of Munger's top recommended books in the description. But before you go, I want to challenge you in the comments below. Write down one difficult problem you are facing right now. Then tell me how you would invert it to solve it. Let's see if we can figure it out together. Start reading and stop being the man with a hammer.